我是今晚的主持，我先用中文讲几句，不好意思。桑德尔教授还需要一点点时间。那么今天呢，因为是最后一场，所以在今天的整个讲座然后对谈以及问答结束之后呢，我们有一个赠送礼物的环节，送他一束花，然后送完花之后呢，希望再和他合个影，或许让桑德尔教授坐在第一排，然后我们一起合个影，有这样一个环节。其实我的意思是说呢，大家不要在结束完之后就立刻都冲上来要签名，当然我非常理解大家的想法但是一个是说有这样一个环节，还有就是他回美国的飞机就是今晚凌晨1点，所以挺紧张的因为他在哈佛还有课，所以当然他很乐意给大家签名了，在时间允许的范围内但只是说呢，大家要有心理准备肯定不可能都签。那么谁先上来也许可以拿到签名，但是没有拿到的同学请理解请理解。而且他还没有吃晚饭因为这不是他吃晚饭的时间对，而且大家呢一定注意安全结束的时候一定听我们工作人员的指挥follow the direction of our staff 他还没过来还没过来Okay, it's about time. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's event. My name is Si Chen, Associate Professor in the Philosophy Department. It's my honor to host tonight's event. This is the third and final lecture by Professor Michael Sandel in Beida. Tonight's topic is meritocracy. It is actually one of the main issues that has been running through the first 2 lectures on the ethics of genetic engineering and AI. With Professor Michael Sandel, we have discussed the question of competition and distribution, of what role technology might play in the process, the question of productivity and efficiency, the possibility of unlimited power and progress, but also the question of fairness, justice, love, sympathy, and even mercy. We have discussed our drive for perfection, but also all those imperfections of ourselves that we actually cherish, all those fragile and precious moments of our lives that we don't want to be corrupted by the ruthless mechanism of development and progress. In the first 2 lectures, I think Professor Michael Sandel has done a perfect job, not of persuading us of his own ideas and answers, but of inviting us and helping us see more clearly the questions themselves, and through these questions to reflect upon and appreciate the inherent complexity of our human condition. Before we begin tonight's talk, please allow me once again to introduce our honored and much-loved guest. Professor Michael Sandel is the Professor of Government at Harvard University and a Fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. He has published numerous books on democracy, liberty, justice, and meritocracy. His works and lectures are among the most important, influential, and relevant ones of our time. Professor Sandel is one of the most inspiring thinkers and one of the best lecturers and successful writers of our time. And so I think it's almost tempting to think that he himself is a perfect sample of tonight's topic, meritocracy. But of course, this is just a joke, because philosophy is different from power, because the telos of philosophy is to explore, to inspire, and to share. The motivation behind is not pleonexia, but philia. And this, I think, we have witnessed this in the person of our guest, Professor Michael Sandel. And also, joining us for tonight is our second guest, Professor Baitong Dong, a professor at the School of Philosophy at Fudan University, a member of the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences, a distinguished professor at Shanghai Universities, and an adjunct professor at New York University of School of Law. His primary research areas include Chinese philosophy, political philosophy, philosophy of science, and philosophy of physics. The plan for tonight is the same as before. First, the speaker will give the talk for roughly 1 hour, and then we move to the conversation part between our two guests, ideally for half an hour. And finally, for the time left, we'll have the Q&A section between the audience and the two professors. And okay, now let's begin. Welcome, Professor. Sorry. Welcome, Professor Michael Sandel.
Thank you. It's great to be back with you for the third lecture where we are gathering together. And our subject tonight is meritocracy. What I would like to propose is a possibly provocative challenge to meritocracy and to explore it with you. The challenge is that I suggest that there is such a thing as the tyranny of merit. Now, how can merit be a kind of tyranny? We ordinarily think of merit as a good thing. If I need surgery, I want a well-qualified surgeon to perform it. That's merit. If I'm flying in an airplane, I want a well-qualified pilot at the controls. That's merit. Being well-qualified to perform an important social role. That's a good thing. So how can meritocracy become a kind of tyranny? That's the question I'd like to explore with you tonight. And as in previous evenings, to explore it with you through a discussion. Are you ready to join me in that discussion? Okay. Now, let me begin by making an observation about the role that meritocracy is playing today in our societies, including accounting for some of the polarization in our societies. How did meritocracy become a kind of tyranny? In recent decades, the divide between winners and losers has been deepening, poisoning our politics, setting us apart. This has partly to do with widening inequalities of income and wealth. But it's not only that. It has also to do with the changing attitudes towards success that have accompanied the widening inequalities. Those who've landed on top during this age of globalization, those who've landed on top have come to believe that their success is their own doing, the measure of their merit, and that they therefore deserve the bounty that the market bestows upon them. And by implication, that those who struggle, those left behind, must deserve their fate too. This way of thinking about success arises from a seemingly attractive ideal, the principle of meritocracy. The principle that says, insofar as chances are equal, the winners deserve their winnings. Now, you may think, and you would be right, that in our societies, chances are not truly equal. Those who are born, children born into poor families, tend to stay poor as adults. Upward mobility exists, but it isn't easy. Studies have tried to measure, actually, how many generations it would take at current levels of upward mobility. How many generations would it take in various countries for someone born poor in the bottom 10% to rise, not to the top, but to the middle, to the median income in their societies? Now, there are some places where mobility rates are quite high. In Denmark, for example, it takes 2 generations only, on average, for someone to rise from poverty to the median. In the United States, said to be the land of opportunity, it takes 5 generations. So some would say this shows that the American dream is alive and well and living in Copenhagen. According to this study, and there are various measures, various studies come up with different estimates, but according to this study, in China, it takes 7 generations. So it's not easy to rise. Now, what are the implications for meritocracy? One possible conclusion would be that this simply shows that we don't live up to the meritocratic principles we profess. It simply shows that we need to do a better job of bringing about a true meritocracy, where chances are truly equal, where there is genuine, fair equality of opportunity. We can think of the image of a race. If everybody starts the race at the same starting point, that's one way of defining equality of opportunity. Everyone has a chance to join the race. Everyone has a chance to take the Gaokao exam. Everyone has the same chance to apply to Harvard if they want to, or to Beijing. That's a kind of formal equality of opportunity, but everyone knows that some people have certain advantages when the race begins. Some people have had good coaching and have very good running shoes and have special nutrition that enables them, and training facilities that enables them to prepare for the race. They're going to have an advantage. So it's not enough that everyone starts at the same starting point. A true meritocracy, genuine equality of opportunity, would require background conditions in preparation that were truly equal. Suppose we could achieve true equality of opportunity so that people began the race with the same advantages, the running shoes, the health, the coaching, the training facilities. here's my first question. Then we would have a perfect meritocracy. Then would we have a just society? Would we have a good society? Would we be able to say that the race was fair in the sense that if everyone had truly equal opportunity to prepare for the race, would we then be able to say that the winners of the race deserve their winnings? Here's our first question. How many would say, under the conditions I've described, where we achieve genuine equality of opportunity, then we can say that the winners deserve their winnings? And how many would say, no, even under those conditions, we could not say that the winners deserve their winnings? Are you ready for the vote? How many say, yes, the winners would, under those special conditions, deserve their winnings? Raise your hand. And how many would disagree? The majority disagree. Let's hear from someone who disagrees. Why would you say that the winners don't deserve their winnings, even if opportunities are genuinely equal? Who will begin our discussion and tell us why? Yes.
Well, I think that...
And tell us your name first.
My name is Shen Sitong, and I came yesterday.
Yes, Shen Si, yes.
Yes, and I think that there's going to be some random factors, like when they are having the race, someone might trip down, and someone might run into another one's track, and they may not follow the rules. So even if they have the same opportunities, if they infringe the rules, or there are some random factors, then the winners don't deserve their winning.
Okay, so let's take the random factors. Suppose there's a little stone on the track and someone trips. Maybe the best runner, actually, trips on the stone that's in the path on the track. That would be a random factor. It would not be the fault of the runner that stone was there, just bad luck. And a lesser runner, not the best, might win. And so we would say that the best runner deserved to win, but due to this random factor, the small stone in the track, the best runner didn't win. So that's a very good example of why we might say that the winner of the race wouldn't necessarily deserve the winnings if they won only due to the best runner tripping and falling by accident. That's a good example. Thank you for that. Is there anyone else who can think? Now let's suppose that the track is very carefully prepared so that there are no stones, no random factors, no stones, or no slippery patches or puddles of water that might cause accidents of this kind. And in that case, if we remove all the random factors, then would you say the winner deserves the winnings?
I think still don't, as I have mentioned just now.
Even on a perfect track?
Yes, because some may...
No random factors?
Yes, but someone may not follow the rules. Like when they are running on the track, someone may run into another one's blocking their ways. So when someone they do not follow the rules, then
But that's cheating?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then let's say that we imagine a race where there is no... And I will change this because there's... Let's then imagine that the track is perfect and nobody cheats, nobody trips somebody else or runs in their lane, then the winner deserves their winnings.
Yes, I think so.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Now, let's see if there's someone who would say, even in that case, special case, where we remove the random factors, still, in that special case, the winner may not deserve the winnings. Yes. Do we have a microphone on this side that we can quickly get? It would be better if people with microphones could stand in the aisles so it's a little bit quicker. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Zhao Yiming, and I majored in international relations.
Yes.
Yeah, and my point is like if we said if the people the winners deserve the game, they deserve to be win. Then how about the losers? So they deserve to be get out. They deserve failure. So my point is why we should to take in this competition, why we should to run around the playground. So there are many other things to do. Then why we should to be evaluated by this game. So this is my point.
All right. So that's an interesting point. That if the only winnings that are available in the society require running around a track as fast as you can, then that raises the question, why aren't there other ways of deciding who wins awards or money? And why just running around a track? Shouldn't other abilities besides foot speed
Yeah, that's my point.
determine rewards and honors? Fair enough. And we're going to come to that. But what about, before we move to that point, about whether there are other forms of competition that should determine honors and rewards, what about the foot race itself? Would you say that for the foot race, in that limited domain, that if everyone had equal training opportunities, and if the track were perfect, that at least for the race, the winner of the race would deserve the winnings that go to the best runner?
I would say because if we put this abstract situation into the reality,
Yes.
the first thing come into my mind is Olympics.
Yes.
So we can
All
say
right.
that the champion, he's the best,
Yes.
runner in this world.
Yes.
But also like the others, maybe they are also competitive. They just, for example, they lose a little bit luck or something else. So
Well, what's the luck? We removed the luck by
Oh,
removing
okay.
all the pebbles and stones and slippery places on the track.
yeah, it's like
So what luck is left?
It's hard to explain because I remember there's an interview to a table tennis player, and he says like in the competition in Olympic, you never know what will happen.
Right.
Yeah.
There are unpredictable developments.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's stay with the example of the Olympics. Let's say an Olympic race. And assuming, thank you for that, assuming we have
Thank
a
you.
perfect track, and you might well say, well, the Olympics should not be the only arena for honoring people, but let's say within the Olympics, with the perfect track, no slippery places, who would say still the winner may not deserve the winnings? Yes. Let's see if we can get a microphone here. Yeah, thank you.
People are born different. They have different abilities. They have different talent. So if someone who are not good in running, he have to compete with other guy who is very good at running.
Right.
That would be not equal for
Okay.
them to compete in this running game.
All right, so this is another argument.
Mm-hmm.
So even if everyone has equal access to training and preparation,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And even if the track is perfect, no random factors like stones or pebbles to trip.
Yes.
Still, you think that some people are more talented as runners than others. They have greater athletic gifts, maybe. And that's not their doing. That's nothing to do with, that's their good luck.
Yes.
And would you say, therefore, that in a perfect meritocracy, an Olympics run is a perfect meritocracy? It's predictable who will win, especially if it's a perfect meritocracy, the person with the greatest athletic gifts.
Yes.
As a runner.
Yes.
But having those gifts is not, and the success that those gifts make possible, is not the doing of the winner.
Yes.
It's a matter of luck. It's almost like a random factor, like a stone on the track.
Yeah.
Being a gifted runner. So to imagine who was a great Olympic runner, Usain Bolt. Have you heard of him? He's the fastest, or was the fastest sprinter in the world. He's just a gifted runner.
Yeah.
So that's random too, you're suggesting, or a matter of luck. And if it's a matter of luck, it can't be the basis for deservingness. Yes?
Yes.
All right. Tell me your name again.
My name is Li Lu Yao.
Li?
Yeah, Li Lu Yao. I came here yesterday also.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that. Now, that's an argument of principle against the idea of deservingness, that natural talents are not our doing, but our good luck. And would you say the same if we expand beyond Olympic running to having the intellectual capacities to score well on the Gaokao?
Yeah.
And so if you extended your argument to the Gaokao, be it from the Olympics, would you say that those who score highest, the winners of that race, can't really think of themselves as deserving the benefits that flow from scoring high?
I think no, because there are much more talent in these areas.
Yeah. And and if it's talent, it's not their doing.
Yes.
It's not the result of their effort and training and hard work alone.
Yes.
Okay, let's see if everybody agrees with this argument. Who disagrees? And there must be some who disagree, because some, all right, yes, toward the back. Some say the winner does deserve the winnings. Yes. Can we get him a microphone, please?
Hello, I'm Leonardo from Brazil. I'm doing PhD in applied economics.
Yeah.
I do believe that we have to come to a sense in certain circumstances to select and be able to achieve what is deserving. So is deserving this context the recognition brought by a medal or the distribution of resources? Because in this sense, if the preparation is perfectly equal between all the participants, then what are they winning? Only the recognition that they achieved that in a certain task, that they perform better than others, or they are receiving more things? So I would question also the deserving part of it.
Okay, what is the prize you're asking?
Exactly.
So if the prize is a gold medal at the Olympics, then you would say that's deserved, that's recognition. But if the prize is a career where you make more money than people who don't win races, then you would say that's not deserved?
Yeah, maybe that would be unfair because it's not proportional to what is being actually measured.
Okay, because being good at running should perhaps lead you to deserve a gold medal, but it should not lead to your deserving to make more money than somebody else.
Yeah, not necessarily. But then I would also bring the argument, and this is my question. If we have generations that couldn't have that same perfect competition, and they strived in an equal competition, how can we distribute the past deservings unto the present?
Right. If present generations and their opportunities reflect past unfairness or disadvantage, that's an important question. Let's reserve that question. So, one challenge to the idea that the winner does not deserve all of the winnings has to do with asking, well, what actually is the prize? But let's see if there is someone who will defend meritocracy in principle against the objection that the talents that enable people to get ahead, whether it's in the Olympics or in admission to universities, those talents are not really our doing, can't be the basis for our deserving anything. They're just our good luck. They're just our good luck. Who disagrees with that idea and will tell us why they disagree? Who will speak in defense of talent as the basis for deservingness? Yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah. My name is Yu Yao, and I agree with the view that you have just said, because I believe that it's hard to say what is actually made of us. Is our talent not a component of our own selves? If so, what is of ourselves? Only the things we do? But, well, as the previous girl had just said, if we only measure people through something that is kind of, well, done after their birth, like, well, they have consistent worked on something, perhaps the people with better talents, they have also worked on it, and they worked a lot, but just because they have better talents, they cannot be measured. And from a second perspective, I also agree with the previous student's view about what the prize would be, or why we are holding this competition. For example, if we're holding a competition to find people who are the best runners, or the people with better power so that they can be a part of our military or something, they have to be the strongest person. And sometimes the talents between people cannot be purely managed through something that is done after our birth.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's to test this. You're saying, well, our talents are actually part of our being, part of ourselves.
Yeah.
And so you hesitate to consider talents purely arbitrary.
Yes.
Such that they don't provide the basis for deservingness.
Yes.
Let's test this by moving beyond the Olympics to the distribution of income and wealth in a society. Let's take, imagine your best, most inspiring teacher in high school. Can you remember that teacher? You probably can remember their name. I can remember the name of my most inspiring teacher in high school. They have a big impact on us. Now, would you say that let's compare the earnings that teacher deserves compared to someone who earns a lot of money? But I mean a lot of money. Who would such a person be? Donald Trump? He may actually not have quite as much money as he claims. Let's think of someone who's wealthier than Donald Trump. He does have more money than Donald Trump, but I want to think about someone someone who's popular, who makes a lot of money. Who would that be? Who? Taylor Swift. How much money did Taylor Swift make last year? Do you have any idea? About $1 billion, something like that. Now, how much did your best, most inspiring high school teacher make last year? Quite a bit less. Now, so here's the question. Now, would you say that Taylor Swift deserves to make 10,000 times more than your best high school teacher? How many say yes? There aren't that many Taylor Swift fans here. How many say, no, she doesn't deserve to make 10,000 times more than your best high school teacher? All right, let's hear from someone who says she does. Yes, she does. Someone over here. Yes, tell us why.
Okay, I'm her fan, and
You're a fan.
yeah, she inspired me a lot, more than my high school teacher, more than anyone in the earth. So I think she deserves the money.
She makes more money than your high school teacher, but what else did you say?
She inspired me a lot. More
She
than,
inspires you more
yeah,
than your best high school teacher? Really?
Yeah, she teach me a lot.
How does she? But first, what's your name?
Oh, okay. I also named myself Taylor.
I didn't hear it. I missed it. Say it again.
I'm Taylor.
Oh, that's your name. That's your name. But you're not related to her.
Yeah.
Okay. So Taylor Swift inspires you more than your best teacher. What was the name of your best teacher?
Okay, her name is called Aini.
Yes. And so how could Taylor Swift possibly inspire you? What subject did that teacher teach you?
Chinese.
Huh? Chinese.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Taylor Swift didn't teach you Chinese. She didn't motivate you to be an excellent student, did she? So how can you say she inspires you more than your best teacher?
When I was down, she would always encourage me by using her music.
She encouraged you, but she doesn't even know you. What do you mean? She?
Yeah, I know.
Did you go to one of her concerts?
I wish, but not.
Yeah. It's hard to get a ticket.
Yeah.
And the tickets are kind of expensive. But Taylor Swift is popular throughout the world, and I'm told she's also very popular in China. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, one graduate student I met the other day said Taylor Swift is very popular in China, and then he said, more popular than Michael Sandel. But that didn't hurt my feelings. So what do people say to Taylor's argument that actually she does deserve, Taylor Swift, to make 10,000 times more than your best teacher because she provides inspiration not only to Taylor but to tens of millions of people? Who disagrees? Who disagrees and doesn't think she deserves to make all that much more than your best high school teacher? Anyone? And who will tell us why? Yes. Go ahead, stand up. And pass the microphone.
Hi, my name is Varia. I'm from Russia and I study linguistics here in Beijing. And I think that Taylor Swift doesn't deserve more money than my favorite high school teacher because I generally don't think that money is something that people deserve because it's just one of the measurements of something that we can deserve, and it's not fully representing what a person can get based on the merit. And
well, what does this raises an interesting question. What does money measure, or what should it measure, do you think?
I think that money doesn't really measure what we usually think it measures.
Well, let's take what do we usually think it measures? Here, let me propose an answer. What we usually think is that the money people make is the measure of their contribution to the economy and to the common good. And that's when we say that Taylor Swift may deserve to make a lot more money than a school teacher, what we're really saying is that we think, taken as a whole, the value of her contribution to the economy, to the society, to the common good, the value of her contribution is greater than the value of the contribution of the teacher. Yes? But you reject that idea.
I think that behind this idea, there is the comparison between influence over one person and more than one person. And in my personal opinion, I know that some people may not agree.
Yeah.
I think that there is no difference between influencing one person and maybe helping them to find light in a dark time.
Yes.
Than influencing thousands and millions of people. Because behind every person, there is someone who helped that person in some period of time. And it doesn't matter how many other people that did they influence over their lifetime.
Okay, very good. Pass the microphone and see what the reply is from Taylor.
I think it's quite fine. I agree with her opinion, and like I know that Taylor Swift influenced a lot of people, and my high school teacher only influenced my classmates. So the amount of people is not equal. So it will cost the money they make in different.
Yes. Okay. Well, this discussion has illuminated really the principles, the assumptions that are at issue in the debate about, in the economy at least, who deserves what and why. And before stating what we've learned from this discussion, I want to thank everyone who's joined in this round of the discussion about deservingness. So what we can learn listening to this debate is that one objection to the meritocratic idea that if chances are equal, the winners deserve their winnings, at least one powerful objection is that even if the meritocracy is fair, even if there's genuine equality of opportunity, there are still matters of luck or random factors, not the doing of the winner, that contribute to their success, especially the fact that some are just more gifted than others, whether it's in Olympic running or in intellectual ability or in having the singing voice and artistic imagination to inspire people like Taylor in dark times. That having certain natural gifts and talents can't be said to be my doing, and therefore it can't be the basis of deservingness. And closely connected to this is another contingency or element of luck. Even if I did, following the suggestion of the person in the back, even if we agreed that my talents are part of my person, the fact that I live in a society that happens to prize and reward the talents I have in abundance, that's not my doing. That too is my good luck. Let's take LeBron James, great basketball player, makes enormous amounts of money. The fact that he lives in a society that loves basketball is a big factor in the money his talents bring. But it's not his doing that he lives at a time when everybody loves basketball. That's his good luck. If LeBron James had lived back in the days of the Italian Renaissance, he would have been just as naturally gifted as an athlete, but he wouldn't have made much money because they didn't care so much about basketball then. They cared more about fresco painting. So this too is a matter of luck. The argument from contingency, luck, random factors, including not only stones in the track, but also some people just being more gifted than others. So that's one objection. A second flaw in the meritocratic ideal is different. It's not really an argument about fairness. It's an argument about the attitudes towards success that even a perfect meritocracy encourages. Because if chances are truly equal, there is all the greater tendency for the winners to assume that their success is their own doing. And this creates a kind of hubris or arrogance among the winners, a tendency for the successful to inhale too deeply of their own success, to forget the luck and good fortune that help them on their way, to forget their indebtedness to those who make their achievements possible, to forget the fact that they are lucky to live in a society that happens to prize the talents they have in abundance. And so here are two different objections, principled objections to meritocracy. One about fairness, the other about hubris, about the attitudes towards success, the tendency of the winners to believe that their success is their own doing, and the tendency of those who lose out to think of themselves as losers, as deserving of their fate, blaming themselves. This tendency of meritocracy to produce hubris or arrogance among the winners and humiliation or a sense of defeat among those who struggle is closely connected, I think, to the politics of our time, to the backlash against elites, especially well-credentialed and professional elites. We see this in many societies around the world. In recent decades, as inequalities have widened, many have argued, many mainstream political parties and politicians have argued, if you're worried about wage stagnation, if you're struggling with inequality, the solution is for you to go get a university degree. This has been the advice to working people struggling with inequality during the age of globalization. If you want to compete and win in the global economy, the politicians have said, go to university. What you earn will depend on what you learn. You can make it if you try. This slogan, the rhetoric of rising, puts responsibility on the individual to overcome the effects of widening inequality, rather than reconsiders the inequality, the structural sources of those inequalities. And so I think there is a connection between the anger and resentment and the sense of humiliation that even a perfect meritocracy creates, and the deeply polarized politics of our time. But there's another objection to, not an objection so much as a kind of tyranny associated with meritocracy. We've discussed the effect of meritocracy on those who lose out, who don't win the Olympic race, who don't win admission to a top university, who don't get a high score on the Gaokao. But there is another toll that meritocracy takes, not on the so-called losers, but even on the winners. Because if you think about, well, what's a historic alternative to meritocracy? An aristocratic society where you land depends on where you're born, the accident of birth, whether your family is born into whether you're born into a noble family or as a serf or as a peasant. And compared to a hereditary aristocracy, meritocracy seems like a breath of fresh air, a source of equality and freedom. People are no longer determined in their life prospects by the accident of birth. But the effect of basing social roles and economic success on your ability to compete for admission to a top university and therefore to compete for a well-paying career, the effect is to shift the responsibility onto you to strive, to work hard, to study long hours, to go to cram courses. Do you know what I'm referring to? Now, and to have parents who want you to succeed, and therefore your parents and your teachers and the society place enormous pressure on you to make your own future, to work hard, to devote effort. And they understand the system, they understand the world into which you will enter, they understand how your fate and your future will be decided. And so, for your own benefit, your parents tell you that your fate is in your hands. You can make it if you try. Everything depends on the effort you expend. But what kind of childhood and adolescence, what kind of high school experience does this produce? A pretty intense, anxious, pressured experience. And so one of the effects of meritocracy, of intense meritocratic competition, and I'm thinking here especially of competition to win admission to top universities, is it takes a toll on the emotional and psychological well-being of the winners. We were talking before about those who lose out, but what about the winners? The toll, arguably the damage emotionally and psychologically, the tendency to view your education as an instrument to something else rather than an opportunity to explore and to reflect and to learn to love learning for its own sake. Is any of this familiar, what I'm describing now? What do you think? Let me put it in the form of a question, if you're willing to give your answer by a show of hands. how many of you would say, reflecting on your own experience and on the experience of your peers, how many of you would say that the intense competitive pressures to succeed as you've been growing up would say that those pressures have had a damaging effect on the emotional and psychological well-being of, well, let's say of the people you know. You don't even have to speak personally about it if you don't want to. Let's see by a show of hands whether you see this as a problem or not. How many would say that it does have a damaging effect on the emotional and psychological well-being of the students who are caught up in this competition? And how many don't think so or have not experienced it? So quite a few people have observed this or experienced this. Let me hear from someone who said yes, who does see it this way. Why do you say so?
Hi, I'm Aiden from Malaysia. So I was speaking from my personal experience.
Yeah.
I'm not applying to the grad school, so that's an emotional roller coaster. Every day feels like a torture to me because I feel very helpless and feel very desperate. There's really no one I can look out for help, and everyone's gains. If anyone receive an offer, feels like it's hurting my emotions. It feels like am I that bad, or I'm worse than anyone else, so that I question my ability at all. So I don't know if I can continue to study, to pursue further studies. That's why now I'm losing confidence in my life.
Okay, and where are you in your studies now? You're studying. You're a student.
Yes, I'm
here,
studying here.
An undergraduate.
Yes, as senior.
A senior.
Yes.
What do you study, by the way?
International politics.
Yeah. And so when your friends or people you know win admission to some graduate school, that makes you feel...
That's not quite uncomfortable.
It makes you feel uncomfortable.
Let's say if that's my dream school.
If they get into your dream school and you don't. Yeah. But you got into this school.
Everyone got into this school.
Okay. And so doesn't that make you feel like a winner?
No, in this environment, I don't.
Okay. So in this environment, you don't, because in this environment, there's always someone who wins something even bigger.
Yeah, so I feel like even though in a very prestigious universities like Peking Universities, the competition still continues.
It
continues. Even though in Harvard, I believe it still continues. That's never stopped.
It does.
Even though within the professors, they still have competitions. Even though they got the tenure track.
Right. Yeah.
So it will never end until they have the only winner. There will only be one instead of a group.
Right. And so there's a kind of endless cycle of competition. And even when you win one competition,
there will be next round.
There'll be the next round. And the next round after that.
There's more exam coming up.
And what's the alternative to this cycle of competition and yet another, and yet another, and yet another? What's... Well, you've said powerfully, Aiden, how demoralizing this is.
Yeah.
And what it means is even the winners feel constant anxiety and pressure for the next round. So when you think about the society as a whole, if people even the winners feel this constant pressure to compete in the next round and in the next round. What would be a better way, do you think?
I mean, for a lot of us, that even though they got admitted to Peking universities, once they figure out they couldn't really get into the next round or next admission,
yes,
most of them just quit.
Wow.
This means like they stop. They will realize they're not really made for academic. They'll go to work, or even they'll go to the things that they'll just give up their dreams to change the alternative career path.
Yes, giving up on their dreams.
Yes, and it just creates desperation in general for everyone.
How many people find this familiar? How many think Aiden is describing something that's familiar to you? Yes? Yeah? Is there anyone else who would like to add to Aiden's account? Do you experience this too? I want to get someone who hasn't yet. Yes? Go ahead. Can we please get a microphone? Yeah.
Thanks. I'm Pan graduate of School of Education. Actually, I have a very different opinion about. Actually, I feel it's a privilege that I stay in the university for a long time. What I'm thinking of is about my peers that in high school, actually they cannot bring some experience of success before they go to the society, which I thought that could be a moral cost.
Yes. So that's on those who did not win admission.
Actually, because I'm thinking, even though that we have to face a lot of competitions, still we kind of have some positive experience, which we thought like there could be some few of us.
So the competition is a positive experience for you?
For the winners.
For the winners. But what about Aiden's point that even the winners are caught up in a cycle of more and more and more competition that feels self-defeating or demoralizing? You don't agree?
I think it's kind of a necessary cost.
It's a necessary cost of what exactly?
Of being successful, because you have more self-esteem.
More self-esteem.
Yeah.
The more you win, the more
yes.
self-esteem. But that suggests that self-esteem depends on winning and keeping on winning. So self-esteem, do you think that self-esteem, Aiden, what would you say? That we get self-esteem by winning. So competition is a good thing.
You get when you win, but you lose, and your one failure might make you question your past achievement. Because you can't get into the next stage, so you say, okay, this might be my peak. And in China, there's like the concept of evolution, which is 内卷, it means everyone... 内卷, right.
So you're really describing the personal experience of 内卷.
Yeah, you feel guilty when you stop improving yourself, or like you stop learning, or taking a rest. Because you know everyone else gonna invest all of their time and get ahead of you. So I feel I'm mentally caged, but it's by my own. I voluntarily or involuntarily put myself in a mental cage.
Yes, it reminds me now. I didn't grow up in this system, and I didn't have to prepare for the Gaokao, but I experienced some of what Aiden is describing even when I was in high school. When I was, 15 years old, I was in a math class where after every quiz and every exam, there was a new seating plan. Because there were 3 rows in the class that were designated honor rows of seats, and which seat you sat in depended on your grade point average in that class as of that moment. So the seating arrangement changed every few days, every time there was an exam or a quiz. Not only that, I remember the teacher would announce the new seating arrangement before giving back your quiz or your exam. Now, I was not the best in my class in math. I was pretty good, but not the best. So maybe I would be sitting in the third seat. And then the new seating arrangement would be announced by the teacher. And maybe someone else was sitting in the third. So I had to gather my books and wait, well, maybe I'll be in number 4 now. Well, no, somebody else was there. And then, so there's the suspense, but also the humiliation of having to move your seat each time. Now, sometimes you got to go up. A higher seat, number 2 maybe. That's better. But what it created was a kind of perpetual competition where we were concerned not only with our grades, we were also obsessed with other people's grades, with their success. And it was hard for that not to distract us from actually the learning. What?
That's from like the school grading. It's always graded on relative scale.
Well,
so it's always about ranking, not your learning.
So what do these examples illustrate? First, I want to thank the participants in this discussion, which is really on quite a sensitive topic and discussed really in a moving way. So what does this tell us? What do these 2 parts of our discussion reveal about the tyranny of merit? The tyranny of merit exerts a kind of a tyranny in 2 directions. Toward those who struggle, to those who lose out. We've discussed the elements of unfairness, the moral arbitrariness of who has certain talents, the moral arbitrariness of whether I happen to have the talents that society prizes and rewards at the moment. And we've also discussed the arrogance that elites can come to have toward those who struggle, the tendency to look down on those less fortunate than ourselves. So that's a problem for the so-called losers, a kind of tyranny. But the last part of the discussion suggests that the winners are wounded too, though in a different way, wounded by the attitudes toward success that meritocracy, even a fully realized meritocracy, produces. And so, if the tyranny of merit is damaging for those who lose out and for those who win, this gives us reason to ask whether we need to pay attention to the dark side of meritocracy, which can be summed up in the observation that the dark side of meritocracy is that it is corrosive of the common good. It leads the winners to believe their success is their own doing, and it demoralizes those who lose out. Merit, in the history of thought and aspiration, merit began its career, its history, as an empowering idea. The idea that we can, through work and effort, succeed, that our success is in our own hands, that we can make it if we try. And this idea makes for an exhilarating promise of individual freedom. Our fate is in our hands. It doesn't depend on the accident of birth. That's an empowering idea, or so it seems. But this vision of freedom is flawed. It's flawed because it points us away from the obligations of a shared project, points us away from the common good. The meritocratic conviction that people deserve whatever riches the market bestows on their talents makes solidarity, makes community an almost impossible project. For why? Why did the successful owe anything to the less advantaged members of society? The answer to this question depends on recognizing that for all our striving, for all our effort, for all our hard work, we are not self-made and self-sufficient. Finding ourselves in a society that prizes my talents is my good fortune, not my due. Recognizing this, recalling the role of luck in life, recalling our indebtedness to those who make our achievements possible, this recognition can prompt a certain humility in the face of success. And this spirit of humility, it's a virtue of character that meritocracy tends to erode. But this spirit of humility is not only a personal virtue, it's also a civic virtue, and a civic virtue that we need now. A lively sense of the role of luck in life can inspire a certain humility. The humility that says, looking upon those less fortunate than ourselves, the humility that says, there, but for the accident of birth, or the mystery of fate, or the grace of God, for factors I can't control, that could be me. Such humility, if we could achieve it, could be the beginning of the way back from the harsh ethic of success that today drives us apart. It could be the beginning of a way beyond the tyranny of merit toward a less polarized, less rancorous, more generous public life. Thank you all very much. And now for a discussion.
Please sit in the middle. Chair. Well, now we move to. Yeah. Okay. Professor Bai, please be on the left side. 你在左边，我在右边。对，他在中间。And now we move to the second part of tonight's event, conversation, discussion, maybe debate between our two guests, Professor Michael Sandel and Professor Bai Tongdong. Thank you. Okay. Let's hear what Professor Bai have to say to the discussion.
Thank you for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to come back to my alma mater. I came from this university, and also it's my hometown. So I'm on exile in Shanghai at Fudan University. So it's a great pleasure to be back. And I listened to some video clips from the last 2 days. I was really amazed at how well my little brothers and sisters, spoke English. When I was your age, when I was at Beida, my English was good, but nowhere close to your level. So I was actually a teacher at Xindongfang. It's just a private language school about how to prepare GRE exams, speaking of the cram courses. And So just please accept my admirations of your English. But at the same time, I think your English is so good because I guess you come from very well-to-do families. So in a way, the fact your English is good is a symptom of the kind of meritocracy Professor Sandel is criticizing. So I'll come back to insult you later. So let me just mention another anecdote. I was in a class taught by Professor Sandel, Professor Harvey Mansfield, and George Will, a Washington columnist. And Will and Mansfield, they're on the right of the political spectrum, and Professor Sandel is on the left. And so in the class, there was very fierce debate on all sorts of political and social issues, but at the same time, very civil and friendly. I think the last day of the golden age. Nowadays, even universities are full of cancel cultures, all these sort of thought police from both left and right. And I think back then, it's 25 years ago, a quarter of a century ago. It just makes me sound old, and actually makes you even sound older. That was the time when George W. Bush was the president, and he was not liked by many people, especially people in Boston, Cambridge. And people say, his people say, history will judge him kinder. Back then, I thought that you must be joking. But now, actually, George W. Bush looks really like a statesman compared to what we have today. So just what happened, right? So 2016, I was back to Harvard to be a fellow at the Suffolk Center for Ethics, and I was supposed to do a presentation defending meritocracy, which become part of my book in English. And Professor Sandel kindly agreed to comment on my presentation. And as a result, he came up with a book criticizing meritocracy. It just shows you how effective my presentation was. And Professor Sandel kindly invited me for lunch. And as the fate would have it, that was the day after Trump was elected. And I still remember you told me, and I told you, both of us didn't have much sleep last night, right? I was just shocked, how this guy could be elected, so in a way, I think I'm very sympathetic to what Professor Sandel criticized about meritocracy, although I defend meritocracy, yet I think in the real world, so-called meritocracy, we see a lot of problems. Professor Sandel mentioned education a lot, and just to repeat what he already said, actually I wrote a paper in Chinese 15 years ago talking about the same effect, namely we live in so-called knowledge economy. Knowledge can be translated into wealth, and then wealth can be also translated into knowledge, right? If your parents make good money, and they can put you in good schools and offer you all the resources, right? And then you enter good universities, and then you get good jobs, and then the cycle just goes on, right? And so in that sense, on the surface, there is meritocracy, there is mobility. Deep down, there's mobility is lost completely. And so in a way, it's even worse than the caste system, than the kind of feudalistic system, because in that system, the noblemen knew they were born with privileges. But in this kind of so-called equality-based meritocracy, the successful people think that they deserve to be successful because they work hard, they're smart, right? Those losers, they're stupid, right? And they're lazy. They deserve to get what they have. So in that sense, I think this kind of fake equality, fake mobility is worse than just the kind of caste fixed system, a stagnant system. And so in that sense, I totally agree with Professor Sandel's point. But then we see that Professor Sandel said, so maybe we should forget about this kind of credential-based system, and instead of, the Democrats in the U.S. Like to give more education to the common people so that they can move up in this knowledge-based, credential-based economy, right? Instead, Professor Sandel proposed that we should celebrate the dignity of work, right? The dignity of everyday laborers. I guess that's where I differ from Professor Sandel, because if you look at what actually happened to the so-called blue-collar workers, right? And many of them are losing out in this kind of more and more technologically driven economy, right? And first automation and now AI, and they're losing out. And but when they are losing out, many of them, they don't try to find new jobs. They don't find dignity any work. Rather, there's this opioid crisis, right? They rather stay home, not taking care of anything, but just smoking pot, right? And so that's one extreme. But then some people stood up against this kind of economy, and I think very recently there is this port workers strike. Workers who work in those harbors, big harbors, port, and they strike against, among many things, automation, right? So finally, they signed a contract where the owners of those ports agree not to use too many machines in the work. Right? And on one hand, I'm very sympathetic to those poor workers who are losing jobs to those machines. On the other hand, I find it just a little bit disturbing that the only way to keep dignity of work is to stop machines from running. Right? And I think to the other extreme, in China, we have a thing called Cultural Revolution, right? And where any spiritual exercises are condemned, universities are closed, right? Only labor is celebrated, and I'm not sure. It depends on your perspective. I guess for a nerd like me, that's not really a good time for me to live in, right? And so I guess I'm suspicious of the solution Professor Sandel offered. I see all the problems, but whether dignity of work or more dignity to the common people is the solution to the problem, because we see that in this kind of situation, the common people either on the one extreme they become very passive, right? In China called 躺平, right? They lie flat. Right? They refuse to do anything. On the other hand, you have a kind of ignorance, blind mania, right? All sorts of right-wing or radical right-wing revolutions. And I guess more generally speaking, we all know that Professor Sandel came from the so-called communitarian background, right? And I think a solution you mentioned in other, probably not in today's lecture, but your writings, is this idea of building up communities, right? Building up communities as a solution of this kind of faceless, machine, technocratic world. I mean, again, I'm all for it. I think community is essential. Actually, for most of us, the large-scale society doesn't really matter to us in most cases. Rather, it's a small community you live in. I think that's a very beautiful, important idea. However, I think a fact of today's society, or modern society in general, is that it is modernity is defined by large society of strangers. Right? And you cannot live in your small community forever. You have to face, you have to encounter faceless strangers all the time. And in order to deal with faceless strangers, we need something called bureaucracy. We need something, the so-called deep state, the Trump people are now trying to destroy. Right? And I think just in general, in the West, that's my impression, living in the US for 14 years total, is that, Europe included, this kind of Republican spirit or communitarian spirit, right? The idea that we work together as a community. I think that, as I said, that's a really beautiful idea. But when we are in this kind of large society of strangers, we need something more than community. I think maybe that's the problem with mainstream Western political philosophy in general, because the spiritual heritage is really going back to Athens and the Roman Republic. right? But they were small republics. And so every time when I heard Americans saying that this republic of ours, I found it funny, right? Athens, there are only 20,000 citizens, right? 200,000 people, but only 20,000 citizens, much smaller than Beida, right? The size of Beida. And so in that kind of setting, a lot of Republican arrangements or communitarian arrangements would work pretty well. But we don't live in that kind of society anymore. So in politics, I think size matters, right? And what kind of size the society is, it demands what kind of politics. So just to sum up this point, I think communitarianism, I really like this idea. I think it's very important. Also, I use a lot of Confucianism. So Confucian also understand human beings are social by nature. We're not, these kind of lonely individuals. So I think we're on the same page. I'm just thinking that communitarianism, the building communities, is not sufficient to solve the problem today. And actually, this idea, in a way, is even poisonous because it breeds this resentment of deep state. To me, evil, good or evil, deep state is an essential feature, or bureaucracy is an essential feature of any modern regime, right? And the second issue is the idea of equality, right? I think this is a running issue here. And again, from my own the resources I'm using, Confucianism, early Confucians, especially some early Confucians like Mencius, they believe in equality in terms of potentials. Everyone can become whatever he or she can be, and the government is responsible for offering opportunities for everyone to succeed. Right? So if inequality is a result of pedigree, bloodline, social status, that's just wrong, right? We need to destroy that. That's why I'm totally on the same page with Professor Sandel in terms of this criticism of this kind of fake meritocracy. So I think that's the shared idea. But then I think the crucial difference is that for Confucians, and I think I tend to agree with their observation, in reality, not everyone can make it. Only the few can make it, can realize their potentials, can actualize their potentials. That's just the simple reality of human life. And related to this point, I think this communitarian or Republican idea encourages people, citizens, to participate in politics, right? To get involved. And I think again that's a very important idea. The government should offer all the opportunities for people to be involved. Not just for one thing, the voting day for the president in the U.S. is Tuesday, which is just a scandal, right? It should be a holiday, so that working people can vote easily. So I think the government should do everything possible to get people involved. But again, the kind of view I tend to adopt is that however hard the government tries, in a large society of strangers, many people are going to be indifferent to politics. I mean, not just so-called common people. Me, right? Even if I could vote for the mayor of Shanghai, I wouldn't bother to vote because I only live in Fudan area. I don't care, whether they build bridge in another district or not, right? It's not relevant to me, right? So in that kind of large society, indifference is kind of inevitable, right? From early on, John Stuart Mill, Rawls, and later Professor Sandel, they all, have this idea of, getting people involved. Again, I totally agree, but I think there's a limit, right? Eventually, those who can actually participate in a meaningful manner tend to be few in number. If that's the case, then what is the solution? That goes to my own meritocratic proposal, namely, instead of making the playing field equal, which to me is a beautiful but impossible dream, what we should do is to make sure the elites are compassionate, right? George W. Bush had this term, compassionate conservatism. So maybe to me the solution is compassionate elitism or compassion-based meritocracy. So it's very, again, using the sort of Confucian resources, the Confucian had this, the term 大人, a great human being, right? So great human being is higher on the political hierarchy, but this human being is great precisely because he or she can serve the small people, the masses, right? So if winners are winners because they can serve the losers, maybe you can change the dynamic, right? And so just put all this together. What I'm proposing is not pure meritocracy, rather kind of mixed regime, right? And I totally agree with you. We should let people say on all sorts of important matters, AI, those things. People should be involved. People's voice should be heard. But at the same time, the masses are not ready to make sound decisions for themselves. We should give more voice to the elites who are compassionate, the right kind of elites, right? So the ideal regime is this kind of mixed regime that combines people's voice with the voice of responsible and compassionate elite. Although I'm using a lot of Confucian resources, actually, I think the American founding fathers, the Federalists, made that kind of argument themselves. Actually, the American regime at its founding was more like the kind of mixed regime I'm proposing here. Of course, there are a lot of problems with that regime, slavery, women cannot vote, and we should get rid of that. But when we get rid of that, I think maybe by accident we get rid of the good designs, the check and balances against the people as well. Maybe we should go back to that regime. So just also about this, the issue of education. So I recognize all those problems, but I think instead of getting away from this kind of exam-based system, I think you and also David Brooks, a New York Times columnist, proposed that we should have a more kind of a whole person, diverse approach to education. But the problem is that when we talk about the kind of whole person approach, in terms of exams, of course, it's not fair to the poor kids. But the whole person approach is even more unfair to the poor kids, right? My son, I can give him piano lessons, right? He can learn a lot of different things, so he can become a fuller person. Whereas maybe all the resources of a poor family, all they can do is to send their kids to some cram course, private training sessions, right? So I think in exams, poor children are unfairly treated, but still they have a chance. When we try to get rid of it, then actually maybe we end up with something even worse, even more unfair to the poor children. And then within the system, I think we can have solutions, right? If you can send your kids to private schools, there will be a very high taxation on private schools. That money will be used to support public schools, right? And income tax will more evenly distributed among all public schools. And SAT courses will be offered to all children, right, for free. And also, I heard a proposal. I think people are doing that in Texas. Some schools in Texas. Public university, like Texas UT Austin, they admit the top 5% of any public school. So if you end up in a poor, inner city school, but if you make it top 5%, that means you have drive, right? You're smart enough. Then it's just like you come from a very poor background. Although your scores are not as high, but your Reddit scores are high enough. So I think there are solutions to this kind of a fake meritocracy. So to just conclude, I think in your book, The Tyranny of Merits, actually, you made a distinction between two kinds of meritocracy. One, the kind of traditional style political meritocracy, which actually you're sympathetic to, and then the kind of technocratic version of meritocracy, which you're criticizing today. And I think actually what I'm proposing is more like a political version of meritocracy. So maybe we're not that apart in the end. So in terms of political meritocracy, I think the problem with the technocratic meritocracy is really is rooted in kind of a radical individualism and unbound capitalism. And so that kind of meritocracy, the pursuit of money, kills off different pursuits of different merits. So maybe so maybe, in terms of that, what we need is a diversity of merits. Not getting rid of meritocracy. In terms of political meritocracy, it doesn't against diversity. Only in politics we need to give more voice to the compassionate people. If you don't care about it, you can do something else. You can be successful in some other things, like being a full-time professor of philosophy who just cannot shut up. But I'll just shut up now. Thank you.
Well, you've given me a lot to think about. Let me just make a few brief replies. First, I'm not against expanding education. So I'm not critical of the Democrats or of liberals for emphasizing education. What I think is the mistake is to respond to the widening inequalities of income and wealth only or mainly by telling people, go to university. That's what I'm criticizing. I think that expanding access, encouraging people to pursue higher education is a good thing. Increasing access for those who can't afford it is even more important. But that's because education is valuable for its own sake. It is not an adequate answer to inequality. That's my argument. That's where I criticize those mainstream parties who for decades have responded to inequality not by dealing with structural sources of inequality or their own policies that led to it, but by saying it's your responsibility if you don't improve yourself as we encouraged you to do. And so that leads to a condition which we have today, which is one in which those who don't have a degree feel looked down upon by elites, and they suffer wage stagnation. For the last 5 decades in real terms, the wages of the median worker have been more or less flat. That's for 5 decades. So there's also an insult implicit in the advice. If you want to compete and win in the global economy, go to university. The implicit insult is, if you're struggling in the new economy, and if you didn't take our advice and get yourself a degree, your failure is your fault. The problem is not our economic policies that led to this inequality. It's your fault for not rising as we told you to. And this is especially it seems to me, misplaced emphasis. Given the fact, and we forget this, those of us who spend our days in the company of the credentialed, we easily forget that most of our fellow citizens do not have a university degree. In the United States, only about 35% of adults have a 4-year degree. And in most European countries, it's actually a little bit less. So if 2/3 or more of our fellow citizens don't have a university degree, it's a mistake to create an economy that sets as a necessary condition for dignified work and a decent life a university degree that most people don't have, which leads me to argue for a greater emphasis on the dignity of work. And by the dignity of work, I don't just mean greater honor and recognition for those who contribute to the common good, but in ways that don't depend on a university diploma. I also mean creating an economy that enables them to flourish. Those people working at the ports, those workers who are worried about machines and robots displacing their jobs, they have a legitimate worry. Now, the best response is not simply to hold back technology. That's not the only alternative. Another alternative is to ask, who decides the direction of technological innovation? Because new technology can be applied in many different ways. It's not in the nature of technology that it automates low-paying jobs or low-skilled or medium-skilled jobs. That's been the emphasis of new technology, coming from mainly from venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. They may assume that that's the best use of technology to replace work, to replace labor in low and medium-skilled jobs. But that's not given by the nature of technology as such. Technology, at its best, serves our human purposes. Another way in which technology could be developed would be to say, not to replace work, but to enhance work, to make the work of low and medium-skilled workers more productive, so that their productivity, the productivity of those workers, would increase, so that they could capture a greater share of productivity growth. But that requires public deliberation about what purposes we want AI and other forms of new technology to serve. And those debates, that deliberation, I think, should involve everyone, including working people. Now, we need structures for that deliberation to be meaningful. And trade unions are one traditional such structure. And today, labor unions have gone into decline, in large part because of political and economic choices that we have made in our societies. I think one of my favorite examples of a labor union demand is one from the late 19th century. The most influential labor movement in the United States in the late 19th century was a group called the Knights of Labor. And among their demands were the familiar demands for higher wages, shorter hours, safer working conditions. But they also had another demand, which was for reading rooms in factories, so that when workers were on their breaks, they wouldn't be at home smoking pot or taking opioids or drinking. That on their breaks, workers could go and read and learn in reading rooms to equip themselves to participate more effectively in public deliberation. And maybe they wouldn't rise to be at the apex of a political meritocracy. Maybe some of them would. One of the most successful governments in British political history was the government just after the Second World War, when the Labour government, actually they voted Winston Churchill, the famous Winston Churchill, out after the war, the Conservative, and they brought in a Labour government. And that Labour government achieved some of the greatest achievements, certainly of any post-war, last century government. They established the British National Health Service. They established the London system of transportation, the subway system, and a great many other aspects of the British welfare state. And 7 members of that cabinet not only didn't have a university degree, the prime minister was an Oxford graduate, but in his cabinet were 7 former coal miners and ordinary working people who brought into being essentially the British welfare state as it existed. And they did a better job, I think, of governing then many of the highly credentialed, technocratically equipped political leaders that we see in a great many of our societies today. Now, that's about technology, that's about the dignity of work. Professor Bai mentioned our being together. I'd forgotten this when Donald Trump, the day after Donald Trump was elected in 2016. It came as a shock to many, not only to Professor Bai, but to most American elites. It came as a shock. I didn't find it quite so surprising, because it's not surprising that after decades of neoliberal globalization and widening inequalities and meritocratic ideas of success justifying or rationalizing those inequalities, after decades of working people being told, your struggles are your fault because you didn't improve yourself, no wonder they felt that elites were looking down with disdain. And no wonder they would therefore support an otherwise disagreeable political figure who channeled and articulated their sense of grievance, their sense of being looked down upon. Donald Trump said in this last election that he was a candidate of retribution. Now, he meant retribution against his political opponents. But working people responded to this, understandably, because not only because some of them responded to the racist parts of Trump's appeal, or the anti-immigrant parts of Trump's appeal, the xenophobia, the hyper-nationalism, but also because they felt looked down upon for generations by Democrats and Republicans alike, and we still haven't emerged from this condition. So I think the way to emerge from it is to promote the dignity of work, to revitalize and renew public discourse, to spread, and we talked about access to education. There is no reason why civic education in the kind of debates we've been having here in the privileged places like Peking University and Harvard, there's no reason why moral and civic education has to be restricted to the confines of places like this. I think it can and should be made available in reading rooms in factories, in local neighborhood settings. There are online resources, I understand, some very good online resources for those who want to watch lectures and debates about justice, whether or not they happen to go to a university like Beida or like Harvard. So I'm for expanding education, including civic education, beyond the walls of privileged places, so that ordinary people, working people, can not only take pride in their work, but can also take pride in being able to develop the skills of reasoning and arguing with their fellow citizens across class lines, rich and poor alike, about big questions that matter, including questions of what makes for a just society, what we owe one another as fellow citizens, and what it means to seek the common good. This broader equality of condition, it seems to me, this broader civic education can begin to move away from a condition where ordinary working people feel looked down upon by those who govern them, and can also maybe diminish the hubris and the arrogance of the elites who are looking down, and bring us at least one small step closer to a politics of the common good. That's the alternative that I would propose.
Okay, thank you very much. First for Professor Bai's challenges and also for Professor Sandel's responses. But we do have to move to the third part. We have 10 minutes left. So anyone in the audience? Oh, this lady, you are the first one. Yeah, someone give her a microphone.
Thank you, Professor, for the inspiring speech and the discussion that you lead. And I really appreciate the idea of encouraging the dignity of work and also to ask those elite to be more humble. But I wonder, I think these are more the perspective for the people who win. So I wonder what will you say to the people who lose, or the people in the median or the normal people, let's say, because I think it's good to ask those elites to change. They have to change their attitude towards success or their attitude towards other people. But I think it takes time, and our society also needs time for change. So for the people, the normal people living in this generation or this time, what can they do? So can they just endure or wait for the change promoted by the people who win? So will that be another kind of arrogance of the elite, or another type of reproduction of the meritocracy?
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I would say not just that working people, ordinary people, should not just endure and wait for meritocratic elites to look more favorably upon them. I agree with you. That's a very important point. Historically, what's brought about change in the direction of greater equality has been when ordinary people organize themselves into social movements, develop the civic skills and civic virtues to participate, to organize, to form movements, to try to move their society so that they are participants and agents of change and improvement, not just sitting back as if they are victims, helpless, waiting for elites to accord them greater recognition. I'm reminded of the time when, this was in 1968, Martin Luther King went to speak to some striking sanitation workers in Tennessee. And this was actually just shortly before he was assassinated. And what he said to them was this. He said, the person who picks up our garbage, these were garbage collectors, the person who picks up our garbage in the final analysis is as important as the physician, because if the garbage collector doesn't do his job well, disease will spread, will be rampant in the community. And then he said, all labor has dignity. He was making an argument to the garbage collectors themselves about the recognition they deserve from the wider society. So it was a support for their strike, but a support that focused on honor, recognition, and esteem, and of course the material conditions that should flow from it. Another example that comes to mind is I remembered, and there was a student here from Brazil who joined in the discussion. On a couple of visits to Brazil, on one visit in particular I made to Brazil, I was taken to a favela, one of the slums in the hills outside Rio de Janeiro, with very large populations of people, low-income people, who live in very difficult circumstances. And there are drug gangs that control many of these communities. And from time to time, the military is sent in to try to take back control from the military. And there's tremendous violence as well as poverty. And I visited on a couple of occasions favelas like this in Brazil and gathered with citizens, especially younger people, of those communities to discuss their view of their own condition and their desire to have their voice matter. And we had discussions about justice and the meaning of the common good, and about security in a community, and about dealing with violence in a community. And I met a man there. His name was Reginaldo. And he helped lead the discussion. He's a middle-aged man. And I learned that he told me he didn't read. He was illiterate until he was 25 years old. He was a waste picker. He made his living by going to people's garbage cans and finding things of value that he could pull out of those garbage cans. And once, in a well-off neighborhood, he found in a garbage can a torn book. And he was curious to know about this book. And the owner of the house came out and asked him what he was doing. And it turns out the owner of the house was a retired professor of philosophy. And the torn book in the garbage can that Reginaldo found was an old copy of the Trial of Socrates. It was a text of Plato. And the retired philosophy professor, because Reginaldo was curious, taught him how to read the book, and they discussed Plato. And Reginaldo became a kind of, he was a kind of favela philosopher. And he taught by leading discussions among the people in his neighborhood. And these were the people whom I had the privilege of meeting. And what struck me about that experience is that Reginaldo and I, people like us, are actually engaged fundamentally in the same vocation, which is to teach philosophy not as an abstract discipline that resides in the heavens, but philosophy really belongs in the city, where citizens gather, including ordinary citizens, who can learn to reason together, argue together, think critically about the common life we share and how to improve it. And so that's the kind of experience that I have in mind when I think we can aspire to something better, to a politics of the common good that includes everyone, not only those of us lucky enough to attend places like this. Thank you for that question.
One more. Sorry, she has already grasped that.
Thank you, professors. I'm Roxy, and thank you, Professor Sandel, for guiding me to think to the limit. I really enjoyed it. And my question can be a good supplement to the last question. So what are your solutions and advice for those people who have realized the issues of meritocracy and had the courage to get out of the system, only to find themselves going into nihilism and losing their purpose of living? So what's the fine line between going against meritocracy and going for nihilism? Thank you.
Going for nihilism. Is that, do you find that that's
I think
a tempting possibility for many of your peers?
Yes, that attributes to a lot of young people today that lose their meaning of working. And also
Tang Ping is an example. Tang Ping.
Lying flat.
Yeah. And also some retired people too. When they get out of the working system, they don't know what system to follow again.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's no quick and simple answer except to say that we need to create sources of meaning in our societies that can supplement and enrich the values of competing and winning in the kind of meritocratic competition that we've been discussing. I think part of what's missing in our public life, and I think this is true in societies around the world, our public discourse is hollow. There's an emptiness, a lack of meaning. I think that's one of the reasons there was such an embrace of, and this goes back 10 or 20 years, such an embrace of GDP almost as a philosophy and ideology, a source of meaning in and of itself, but then people quickly realize that that's not enough, maximizing GDP or achieving material prosperity. Just as people, like as Aidan pointed out earlier, realize that competing and winning is not enough. Because we all then, even when we succeed, ask, well, what's next? What does this mean? So I think we need to cultivate beyond greater civic participation and deliberation. From that has to come sources of value and meaning that can't be provided either by markets or by technology, but only by us. And in a way, this connects with the themes of all three lectures. Technology can't provide meaning. Technology is a tool that we need to direct. Meritocratic competition and market competition can't provide meaning. If anything, they tend to erode forms of community that can sustain traditions of meaning and new interpretations of those traditions. So this is not a simple solution, but what your question prompts all of us, should prompt all of us to reflect on, how we can create sources of meaning that are not merely privatized, but that have some public dimension, which I think requires philosophy in the broadest sense of looking at the philosophical traditions that we inhabit and trying to reinterpret and revitalize them in ways that can give sources of meaning, not a single answer to questions of value, but a plurality of interpretations, not only about what makes for a just society, but also what makes for a good and satisfying and fulfilling mode of life. That's a big project, and we would need more than 3 sessions together fully to explore it. But I want to thank everyone. I've been impressed, Professor, not only by the English language abilities of this group of students, but also by the courage to stand up and voice opinions, especially opinions that are sometimes sensitive and controversial and personal. And I've also been impressed by the spirit of engagement, to engage in disagreement. And we had a lot of disagreements over these 3 evenings, but with the spirit of civility and mutual respect. And that, I find that impressive and also a source of hope. So for all of that, thank you very much.
Well, I think it's perfect timing. It's already past 9 o'clock, and as I mentioned, Professor has to fly back to America tonight. So we do have a final section. We will give a gift to you. Please come up. Yeah. Thank you very much. Let me. Let me explain a little bit. This is, of course, flower, but more importantly, it contains willow branches. Because in ancient China, we have this habit, we have this custom. When dear friends are leaving, we break off willow branches. to symbolize friendship and learning. So this is our way to say to you that you are our friend, and we will miss you very, very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
还请大家就坐一下，然后等下教授会下来，然后我们进行一个观众的集体大合照，大家不用动哈，然后我们的摄影师傅会进行一个全景的摄像，请大家坐好。
Final picture. Final picture. Picture of the whole audience. Okay. So,
Our...
No. Here, one over there. Yeah. Let me have this.
Oh, I will take this. Yes, in the middle. Maybe this way, please.
We will have a final picture.